Welcome back, my friends, to the De-Rate the Hate podcast. I am Wilt from Wilt'sWorld.com, and this is going to be episode 70. And this week, we are going to talk to somebody who might get your dander up just a little bit, but I think it's an important conversation. I have a question. Is there redemption for radicals? I'll let you stew on that for just a second. Here at the De-Rate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. Now, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. So what have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? It's all about all of us as individuals doing everything that we can to make our lives better lives, and in turn, making the world a better place. Now, let's get back to that question. Is there redemption for radicals? There's a lot of people out there that are deemed radicals and extremists, and does that mean once they're there, once they're in that position, they can't come back from it? Is there anything that a person can do once they've been labeled an extremist? Once they have gone to the extreme of hate? Now, I don't mean somebody who's killed another person or destroyed the life of another person. There's certain people that do certain things that are certainly have no place anymore amongst civilization, amongst civilized people. But I'm just talking about the people who act out in a certain way, or maybe they spent a lot of their life as a racist, or in this case, our guest today is actually the leader, or the former leader rather, of the National Socialist Party, which at one point was the largest Nazi movement in the United States of America. Now, Jeff Schoep led that organization for a very, very long time, but ultimately had an awakening of sorts that led to him becoming de-radicalized. And not only become de-radicalized, but wanting to de-radicalize others, which is why he started the Beyond Barriers organization, where he and his team are doing phenomenal work to try and help de-radicalize people, help get people out of the Nazi movement, or extreme movements of all types. Now, does that get one redemption? Let's talk about that movement that Jeff Schoep was in. Let's talk about that awakening that he had to get him out of that movement. And let's talk about what Jeff is doing with Beyond Barriers now to de-radicalize others and get other people out of those hateful extremist movements. And then you decide, is there redemption for radicals? Let's get to that interview. All right, Jeff Schoep, thank you for joining the De-Rate the Hate podcast. I appreciate your time.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I appreciate the fact that we were able to get together on such short notice. I just became aware of you recently when I saw a video where you were talking to Josh Stepikoff at the Simon Wiesenthal Center?
Simon Wiesenthal Center, yep.
Yeah. And I was really intrigued by the message you guys put out there and that interaction between the two of you. And that was only a couple days ago. And thankfully, we were able to make contact with each other. So, again, I greatly appreciate the time and the fact that we were able to get you on here on such short notice. So, Jeff, the reason that I want to talk to you, and I'll let you kind of explain your background to the listeners. The reason I wanted to talk to you is because I know you come from a radical background, and you've been able to turn that around. At the De-Rate the Hate podcast, we're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. I am a full-on believer that people can redeem themselves and be forgiven for their past indiscretions. And the stuff that I've seen about you and your organization Beyond Barriers so far has been impressive. Like I said, it's been a short time, but the stuff I've seen, I'm really digging. I like it a lot. So tell the listeners, what is your background? How did you come to be the founder of Beyond Barriers here in the United States?
Well, that's a long story, but to go back, originally
it doesn't have to be the whole thing. It doesn't have to be the whole thing.
We'd be here all day.
Yeah, just the abridged version, a couple minutes.
Version.
Yeah.
Got it. So from a very young age, we'll start at the beginning, but from a very young age, I was interested in, Nazism, basically, back in, many years ago. My grandfather and my great uncles fought in the Third Reich, so I had a fascination with that, even though it wasn't something that was promoted in our family or that they supported or anything like that. But they had been involved, being attracted to history and being interested in history. I was specifically looking into that history, that part of German history, unfortunately. And that led me eventually to try to find an organization like that here in the United States and to get involved. And eventually I joined an organization called the National Socialist Movement, which is basically America's Nazi Party. And I got involved in that and spent 27 years total involved in that organization. 25 of those years, after being involved a couple of years, I had went up through the ranks of the organization and was appointed to run the organization. So I had 25 years of running America's largest Nazi party. When I joined, it wasn't the largest, but by the time I left in early 2019, it was the largest Nazi party in the United States. So that's a little bit of the background on what I was involved with when I was an extremist.
So tell me, Jeff, so I get the history part, and now my every male in my family has up to the generation, and even I was in the military. I get that part of the history of your family and how you became interested in it, but to become so involved that you became the leader of it and were involved for 25, 27 years. Now, that obviously to maintain that kind of a position, to be that kind of leader of an organization that I think we both agree now is built primarily upon hatred for fellow human beings. How did that part manifest itself in your brain?
That's a good question. And when you get involved in these type of things, and I'll speak from my personal experience and also for just in generally a lot of the people getting involved in this, because it from the outside looking in, I think a lot of people see it as like, why would anybody join that? And that's normal to think like that. Why would anybody join that? I mean, now looking back and from the outside looking in, that's a good question to ask. And that's what most people, when they're looking at these things, think of. Now, how I want to explain this is nobody joins these organizations thinking to themselves, you know what? I'm going to be the bad guy. I'm going to get involved in this because I want to hold people down. I want to be, I want to oppress people. I want to do all these terrible things and I want to be hated. Nobody does that. Hate is fostered, hate is developed within these organizations, but that is not the driving factor that typically gets people to join and get involved. And what it boils down to really is fear. And when you're involved in it, you don't like to admit that. It's not something that you probably don't even see it. If someone had told me, hey, you're afraid, that's why you're involved in this, they might have gotten punched in the face or something. It wasn't something that people in these movements want to hear, but it is fear, and that fear breeds the hatred. It fosters that hatred, and it's all these fears that they have for the far right specifically, and the cause that I was involved in. There was the fear of white people being genocided, fear of the Jews were going to take over the world and control us and enslave us, and all these sorts of things that are conspiracy theories. But people that are involved in it truly believe it, and they really do believe it. And that's it's easy to look at it from the outside and just go, that's just hate, and these people are stupid, and that's why they're involved in it. But that's not really accurate. It is hateful, yes, but that is not typically the driving factor. So if we want to get people out of it, and it asks like what I do today and what I do now, Beyond Barriers that's one of the things that our nonprofit Beyond Barriers does, is we help people in conflict resolution, in dialogue, and bringing people out of extremist groups, and not just the far right, but the far left, religious extremism, cults, gangs, things like that.
Right. And that was my next question, Jeff, was, okay, so after 25 years or 25 years in the leadership of the largest neo-Nazi party in the United States, and 27 years total. And obviously, like you said, that hatred builds over time. It's not the beginning force, but it's certainly the catalyst that keeps the wheels turning in those types of organizations. Now, and you said you were there until 2019. Tell me what happened in 2019. Was it an overnight thing? Was it a flip a switch? Was it an epiphany in a dream? What happened to make Jeff Schoep say, I've had enough with this neo-Nazi mentality, this mentality of hate? What happened? Tell me, where did that come from? How did you make that transition?
Well, it's a process. It's not for everybody, it's different. And it wasn't like a snap of a fingers and hey, I'm out. It started in my process was backwards. This is not how we recommend getting people out of organizations. Is first you disengage, then you de-radicalize. In my specifics, in my personal story, I was de-radicalizing before I disengaged, which is the opposite way of doing this. And we don't recommend it. It's not the recommended way, but my story is pretty unique and it's unfortunate really, but it was experiencing different things through that period of time where it wasn't just one instance. There was a number of instances, and I pinpoint some of those. And there's some people that I can't talk about because they're not public, but there was a lot of people that played a part in this. But some of the people that I can talk about are public. But in 2016, I met a man who I work with to this day at Beyond Barriers by the name of Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is a Black man. He's a famous musician. He played with Little Richard, Chuck Berry. He lights the piano keys on fire. He's a phenomenal musician. For anybody that doesn't know him or hasn't seen him, check him out, Daryl Davis. And Daryl's also one of the experts in this field as well. And we're just absolutely honored to have him. But I sat down with Daryl when I was still in the movement for his film that he was working on at the time called Accidental Courtesy. And in that film, we had sat down to film, and he's telling me about when he was a boy and in the Boy Scouts and how he was being pelted with rocks in the Boy Scout parade and how that affected him. And of course, we're filming for a documentary, which is nothing new for me. I'd been in countless documentaries, but it was sitting across from someone that had experienced that trauma as a child and sharing that with me. And here I'm thinking I'm, going to do my part for the movement. I'm going to, do, another part in another film. No big deal. It's going to be for the movement. And here this man's telling me about how hatred, how that racism, how it affected him as a child. And it put me back, like thinking about my own children and the reasons why I got involved in this struggle, thinking that I was going to do something good, that I was going to save my people, save my nation. Now, all of a sudden, I've got this person sitting in front of me telling me about how that ideology damaged them as a child. It didn't sit right with me. And now I still stayed in the movement after that, but that was one of the big seeds that was planted. And within a year of that time, I had met another filmmaker for Dia Khan, who's a Muslim woman, for the film White Right Meeting the Enemy. And you can see a lot of things in that film that play out where she was getting to me in that film by helping me to reconnect my humanity. And she was able to do it with other people that were in the film too. So anybody that hasn't seen it should check it out. But
that's incredible. When I think most people want to be good in a lot of ways, our nature as human beings is not good. We have to fight our natures. We have to fight our nature to be good people in a lot of ways. I think ultimately we want to be good people, but it does take work at times to be good people. When we hear stories like that, I tell you what, I grew up very miserable in a lot of ways, and as a young adult, I was very angry, and I I stayed very angry a long time. It took me a lot of work to become a happier person. And I did that by realizing that the people around me did not deserve to be around a miserable person. And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about here. I think when I hear your story, and I can actually see on your face the sincerity in what you're saying, and how those emotions kind of come back to you when you're telling those stories, and it's incredible. And when you think about the damage done to Mr. Davis when he was a child, because of people who they had no knowledge of who he was. They just knew he was a young black Boy Scout, and they felt that he was somehow infringing upon the world that they wanted, or some white utopia that they believed truly existed. But they never took the time to think about who he was as another human being. And then you talked about being in countless documentaries. I think it's great that you talked about the title of that, engaging the enemy. What? Say that again. What was the
white right meeting the enemy? That was
white right meeting the enemy. Okay,
mm-hmm.
and that's something that I definitely want to connect to in the show notes, because I think those types of films are incredibly important for what you and I are both doing, and that's to get people to engage more with each other, because the more we know about each other, the better off we are. Now, I'm not one that believes in as you get a chance to see more of what I've done and what I talk about on the De-Rate the Hate podcast, I am not one at all that believes that white nationalism is the greatest thing we must fear in the United States. I don't. I think it's the thing that's most highly publicized. I think it's one of the most evil things that a person can become involved with, and I'm just being completely honest. I don't believe in white supremacy. I don't believe in white nationalism. And I also don't believe the politicians that try to use it as a pandering point to make everybody scared. Because as you and I both know, and what you alluded to earlier was, it's not necessarily, it doesn't start as a hate thing. It starts as a internal fear thing that somebody is infringing upon your life. And I think we see that a lot in our media. I think we see it a lot, Jeff, in the politicians and the way that they try to divide us. And they're always putting us in these boxes. Now, again, I can't say it enough times. The whole concept of white supremacy and white nationalism, to me, is nonsensical, in the fact that I don't think it's as large a movement as the media and the politicians would have you believe. I don't think most Americans know anybody who's actually a Nazi, when politicians are always screaming about Nazis especially in the past 3, 4, 5 years. There's a Nazi in every closet. There's a Nazi under every bed. Everybody who doesn't agree with me is a racist. I think that stuff is nonsensical. And I think it's built to drive division, and built to drive fear, and built to build a bigger movement like the one that you just got out of.
You make some really great points there, and the division right now that we're seeing in the country is something that I haven't seen in my lifetime. I agree with you. There's a lot of times the term Nazi is thrown around quite a bit, and it can apply by today's standard. It can apply to just about anybody, depending on who the accuser is. My story, I come from a real Nazi movement, but you're right. It is not the majority in this country. And a lot of what we're seeing right now, the politics of division, are toxic, absolutely toxic. And it is designed, I don't want to get into a conspiracy theory about it, but when you make everything about race, and this could be, hitting people on the left and the right. When you make everything about race, and when I hear that in today's society, in the media and things like that, you know what I think of? It reminds me of my time in the movement, because everything in the movement, in the Nazi party, in the movement, in that movement, when I say the movement, I'm generalizing, but when I was in that movement, everything was about race. So when you see that talk in the media and in the public today, that's what it reminds me of. And I do warn about it. I don't pick sides. I'm nonpartisan as much as possible, because I think it's important in the work that we do in conflict resolution
Absolutely.
and trying to change and save lives. It is so important. And that thought that everything, making everything about race, we're supposed to be beyond that as a country. And I think that's a really important message.
You're exactly right, Jeff. I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I talk about the things that I do. Tell me about, or talk about this paradigm shift that we need as a country. I know at Beyond Barriers, you are about de-radicalization, and it's not about politics, and I'm glad it's not. I try not to let politics overwhelm the conversation on the De-Rate the Hate podcast, because that's not what it's about. It's about relationships. It's about what I can do to make my life better today, what you can do to make your life better today. Because as you make your life better and I make my life better, and each of us as individuals makes our life better, we're going to make a better world. So talk to me about the paradigm shift that a young radical needs to become de-radicalized.
Great question. And that starts with not dehumanizing one another, seeing the humanity in each other. And that's basically the concept of Beyond Barriers, is that you've erected these barriers in your mind. You've set them up yourself. Nobody did this to you, but the radical or the person that's in there has put these barriers up, and you don't allow yourself to see the humanity of people that are beyond the barriers, or in that echo chamber or that bubble, whatever you want to call it. But your group or your in crowd, however you want to see it, are with you behind those barriers. And that's your media, that's your information, that's how you think. If you doubt something, they all uphold the mission of the group. So it's very cult-like, actually, if you break it down. I didn't like that term when I was involved. But breaking it down, once you're out and you're looking at it, my gosh, it is about as cult-like as you can get. So yes, we do need to absolutely change the way we look at each other. A lot of times, I think for society, especially when they look at radical organizations, and I don't care right, left, whatever, when you look at a radical, an extremist, when you look at those people that are in there, they feel like they fit in that checkbox, like, oh, that person's just evil. And it's easy to say that because, like, hey, if you're out there spewing hate and racism and that sort of stuff, what other label to put on it? Yeah, that's just evil. Well, we're not going to reach those people. And I'm not saying, everybody should stand together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya or anything like that anyways, because some people are not ready or willing to do that sort of thing. But we have to rehumanize one another. And this is something, before I left the movement, I remember doing an interview at one point, and I was talking about how the press and the public dehumanizes us people in the movement at the time. And the press people were looking at me like, just give me this crazy look, but not saying anything, like not calling me out on it. So here is somebody, myself, that was dehumanizing countless people, entire races and groups of people all my life. And I'm sitting here talking about dehumanization. The irony of that does not fall far from the tree, now looking back, how ironic. But the point being so that's when I was starting to go through that de-radicalization process. So I was seeing that I was being dehumanized, but I didn't see the irony of being the dehumanizer. So these are all like little puzzle pieces. And if you rehumanize the individual that's in there, and a lot of times it just has to, it comes down to conversations. And one of the reasons why Daryl Davis and even Dia Khan, and with the work we do as well at Beyond Barriers, that we're successful in reaching people, is because we listen. So when Daryl Davis has over the years gotten over 200 Klansmen and people like that to walk away from the movement, give them his robes and
That's incredible.
their robes. Yeah. So, and it all comes down to dialogue. It comes down to listening. So even the far right, especially, respect is a big thing. It's huge. So if you sit down with somebody and you listen to them, even the most vile garbage is coming out of their mouth, and you listen to them, conversations are reciprocal. So now they have to listen to you, and that's when you can slide through those barriers or open that window and go, well, what do you think about this? Or how about this? And you can plant those little seeds. Don't expect it to work immediately. It typically doesn't. For some people it does, but typically it doesn't. Usually you have to plant some seeds, and a lot of it just has to is simple, like just being kind and listening and having that dialogue.
Right. Well, like I said in the beginning, Jeff, I think, personally, I think most people are not beyond redemption. I think most people for most things can be forgiven. There's certainly things on this planet and certainly things amongst human beings that are unforgivable and would render somebody incapable of being amongst other human beings. And don't get me wrong there. But I think most people for most things can find redemption. They can be reached, and it's important work that you and the folks at Beyond Barriers, it's very important work that you're doing, because it's better. I don't think we would be a good human being if we didn't at least try to reach those. Another friend of mine that works hard on de-radicalizing people is Muhammad Ahmed of averagemuhammad.com. And he does a lot of work with young people and tries to reach young people before they can become radicalized. And I think that's incredibly important work. And that's on the same level as what you're doing. And, it's really, when you think about it, Jeff, the folks in the Nazi movement, let's be realistic. A lot of it is thought and talk, because the actions, the parts that you were talking about, like Daryl Davis experienced it as a young child when they were throwing rocks at a young Daryl Davis in a Boy Scout uniform in a parade. That stuff is not happening today. And if it does, it is such a scarce event and it's so socially unacceptable that you just don't get away with that stuff nowadays. When it's just still in the thought stage or the mentality stage, I think you can still find that redemption for certain people. And I think that's incredibly important, the way that you're doing that and the way that you're talking about doing it, because by instantly demonizing them and driving them further away from that paradigm shift, we will never get anywhere as a society with those who wish to continue building that hate wall that they do. Like you said, it doesn't start as hate, but it begins to manifest itself as hate the longer things go, and the more people push them away, that hate begins to manifest itself more and more, and then it eventually probably will reach that point where it manifests itself in actions, whether it be attacking people or burning crosses or firebombing, whatever. If we can reach the people before those thoughts and even some of those words manifest themselves in unforgivable actions, it's our duty as Americans. It's our duty as human beings to do that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I agree with you 100% on that. And I'm glad you mentioned Average Muhammad. Actually, we do work. He's my brother, and we're working on a project right now that should be out in a couple months. But that's really what it boils down to, is being able to help people change. And a lot of times people will look at it as like, well, okay, so a group like Beyond Barriers is trying to stop people from getting too radical and get in this. And why do we care about these extremists? Just lock them up. Or I've heard that before. I've even gotten some criticism before, and they say the only reason Jeff Schoep is doing this work is to save his old Nazi buddies. I've heard that accusation. And I think, it's like, okay, if you save one person that, was going to get involved, okay, great. That's bonus points. But I'm looking at it from a perspective of, What if we off-ramp the next synagogue shooter, the next Christchurch mosque shooter, the next Sikh temple shooter? What if we off-ramp that person? It's not about saving that guy or that lady's life. It's about saving all those innocent people and all the families, that the ripple effect that goes out through the whole entire community. And that goes back to exactly what you were just saying about humanity as our duty as human beings, as Americans, or as humanity, to try to do something better. It's not that narrow view of looking at like, well, that one guy that we just off-ramped last month, we saved him, that's great. No, it's countless lives. And that's the big picture. That's the way people need to look at it, because we are saving potentially countless lives by doing this work.
You're absolutely right, Jeff. You're absolutely right with I think you're right on point. I think it's important what you and the folks at Beyond Barriers are doing. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you. I know that the message you're putting out there falls greatly in line with what I'm doing at the De-Rate the Hate podcast. Anything that we can do as human beings to bring down that level of hate. I open each show and I talk, I say, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. We can turn it down. It's a matter of how we live our lives, how we can get involved. If we see a potential for somebody becoming radicalized, like you're talking about, if we see the potential for somebody to become that next mass shooter or the things that they're doing, if we can get to them and we can get them to engage in that paradigm shift, there's nothing that we can do more important for that person. Not only for the people, like you said, not only for the ripple effect that it has upon the victims, but that person is so filled with hate. And if we can somehow get them back to reality and get them to engage in real life and become a happier person and a less hateful human being, then we have to do it, Jeff. We've got to do it. And you guys are doing it over there Beyond Barriers, and I greatly appreciate it. My hat's off to you, and I got to tell you, I hope we can talk about this kind of stuff more often. I think what you're doing and the De-Rate the Hate podcast, we can collaborate and really make a difference in some lives. I really hope so. I really think so.
You are. Every time we talk about this type of thing and put these messages out there, it gets people to think. So keep up the amazing work that you guys are doing, and happy to collaborate with you on future projects as well.
Jeff Schoep, I greatly appreciate your time. We definitely have to do it again. Keep up the good work, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Friends, I will ask you again. Do you believe in redemption for radicals? I believe in redemption for radicals. I think there's a time that we have to look at things from a different perspective and be able to step outside our own mentality for a minute and figure out, how did certain people get to be the way that they are? How can we reach those people? What can we do to help them become better people? Instead of just demonizing everybody right offhand, let's think about how we can reach them from a human perspective. How can we help them to make their lives better? How can we help them to make the world a better place? Jeff Schoep and Beyond Barriers USA are making the world a better place. This is a man who was a part of a hateful organization, and through the work and the words and the experiences of people like Daryl Davis and Dia Khan, he had a paradigm shift. He was able to figure out that his life needed to change, his mindset needed to change, the world around him needed to change, and he is doing great work with the folks at BeyondBarriersUSA.org to make the world a better place now. So ask yourself, is there redemption for radicals? Just think about it. Again, what have you done today to make your life a better life? What have you done today to make the world a better place? It's all about us as individuals putting in the work, just like Jeff Schoep and the folks at BeyondBarriersUSA.org. With that, I'm going to say get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember, it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. I am Wilk from wilksworld.com. Email me. Let me know what you think. Check us out wherever you get your audio. Leave us feedback, subscribe, and share us with your friends. We're also on most social media platforms. Check us out and follow us there too. Share us with your friends there. We're all about bettering the world one attitude at a time, and I'll hope you join us in that fight. Thank you very much, and I'm going to back on out of here. We'll catch you next week.